So let's start. So you're impact investor, director, and social business angel. So it's very interesting for the entrepreneurs. So my first question is: corporate foundation often do good for society in order to create a friendly image for the corporation, but is there more, or is it all green or social washing for you?
I don't know whether the audience is well aware of the whole concept of corporate foundations. But corporate foundations for a long time have been a kind of extension of the CSR report. We're somewhere on page 55 down there, or when the corporation was under pressure, they had to step up to behave as good corporate citizens, or they had to make sure that the different stakeholders were providing the good face of the corporation. That's their traditional role for a long time, and still today. In many cases, this is a prime role. But it's in fact so much undervalued and so much overlooked that corporate foundations can do so much more, because corporate foundations are at the heart of the social innovation. Corporate foundations, they are day in, day out, they are very close to social entrepreneurs, social settings, social challenges, and so on and so forth. So their knowledge about the social space is much more depthful and is much more, let's say, experienced than we might think. And if you just imagine that a corporate foundation could become a pipeline of social innovations, that more and more, because businesses are moving along the spectrum in becoming inclusive businesses, that those corporate foundations can become a pipeline of social innovations with business value. Because the two, social value and business value, that's the discussion of today and tomorrow, become closer to each other. And if the corporate foundation can be that social angle with the knowledge of the business, because they're walking on 2 feet, they're a foundation, but they're a corporate foundation, knowing the corporation very well. So if they can do that, that would be terrific. The more, because corporate foundations have one big advantage. They're grant makers. And grant makers, they can be bold, they can take big risk, and they can think long term. We all know our corporations would like to be bold, our corporations would like to think long term, and would like to take high risk, but in reality, very often, they are confronted with shorter term issues. So the combination of the two, I think, and that's what we are exploring, and that's where we see great examples or is emerging.
Is it for you, is it difficult to see how concretely corporate foundation can contribute to the sustainability program of the corporation? Could you explain and give us to share with us some example, concrete example? Concrete examples,
yeah. As EVPA, we have now around 70 corporate foundations, and we're doing a research on how the strategic alignment between the corporate foundation and the corporate can work out. And we see plenty of examples. I'll give you just one, maybe two.
We have time.
If you sorry?
We have time.
We have time. Okay, thank you. Let me share two examples. First example is Heineken. Heineken, big brewery company, is very active in a lot of emerging countries, Africa, amongst others. And Heineken Foundation was thinking, how can I do good while helping my corporation? Not directly in the supply chain or not directly in the day-to-day operations, but how can I fulfill my mission of doing good and at the long term also be a benefit for my corporation? And they start to think about malaria. One of the big reasons the productivity in many plants, in many breweries in Africa is so poor is that there is big absenteeism. And the absenteeism is due to the fact that workers get sick. And most of the time they get malaria. So their first idea was, okay, let's fight malaria, let's make sure that the workers are well protected. But then still again, the workers were not showing up. They were not showing up because the families, the mother, the sister, the daughters, the kids, they were catching malaria. And still the father or the mother, whoever was the working, they stayed home. So the foundation started to think we have to enlarge the program. We have to support the whole community. We have to support the whole family of the workers to get anti-malaria. And that great insight, in the end, turn them into whatever solutions with Bill and Melinda Gates and with others to fight malaria for all communities.
How can we fight with malaria?
Yeah, with bed nets, they have these very specific bed nets that people should use that are impregnated with specific issues so that malaria can't get them. So there are a couple of, again, Bill and Melinda Gates is very big on how to fight malaria, and they teamed up with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But the idea was, let's primarily target not just any group of people in Africa. Let's target the society around, or the communities around the factories. Because if we do so, over time, the productivity of our workers might go up. And there was a whole analysis, once after 3 years they conducted a program, was a whole analysis whether the productivity of the workers did go up. And the good news is that not only the productivity was going up, but also the pay raise of the people that were coming to work, because they're working harder and more, they also started to earn more. So also the livelihood of their community and their families was going up. And that's how you see that if you target a crucial social issue, which also affects the business, that the two can come together and creating social good and at the same time big benefit for the business. So that's one example.
And the other one?
The other one is, I have a couple of one in my head, but let's talk about the Cna Foundation, because I think what Cna Foundation is doing today with Leslie Johnston as the CEO of the worldwide Cna Foundation is also amazing. Making t-shirts, I don't know whether you know how much liters of water you use to make one t-shirt. Anyone has a guess? It's over thousands of liters of water. When I saw this figure, I could not believe.
How much?
Over thousands of liters of water to make one t-shirt. It's amazing. You can't just imagine. It's due to the growing of cotton. It's later on
cotton,
for the dyeing and so on and so forth. So the first thing when she was appointed the CNA director worldwide was to go to the sustainability department and to the CEO of CNA. And she was asking, what are your sustainability programs? And he said, organic cotton, probably, we want to push this. Wastewater, the dyeing, is polluting a lot of water, and a couple of other things. So she said, what can I do as a foundation with a social mission to help you out? So she's supporting, amongst other, a big program around organic cotton. And the novel thing is that she understands that she cannot do this alone. So she teamed up with competitors. Now, a corporation, it's very hard to team up with competitors. You see it, but still, it's a hard ball to team up with Puma and Inditex and some others. She was quite easily reaching out and finding the foundations of the competition to team up in turning the whole sector into more organic cotton. Secondly, she could find that there was too little technology to take care of cleaning the water when dyeing the clothes. Why so? Not because technology was not available, because local banks, local financiers thought it was too risky to invest in this early stage novel technology. So what she did with the grants is provided a first loss guarantee, pushing some of the banks to invest in this new technology, and hence so finding support to clean the water with these new technologies locally. So these are two examples how, in the end, the benefit of the business and the benefit of society can coincide on the long haul.
And my last question for you, from a sustainability perspective, what is then the difference between a CRR department and a corporation foundation?
The CSR department, I think you all know the CSR department taking care of the sustainability department. It doesn't matter, in fact, taking care of sustainability within the company, and then you have the corporate foundation. This is, of course, then the question, if the corporate foundation is applying more and more social innovations, doing social good, what is the role of the CSR and what is the role of the corporate foundation? It's all about ends and means. A CSR department, primarily building materiality matrices and so on and so forth, is applying sustainability for business benefit. And there is nothing wrong with that. But the CSR department is requested and required to find sustainable issues, whether it's on environment, whether it's on social inclusion, whether it's on anything else, biodiversity, but they're requested to find social challenges, societal challenges that bring direct business benefit on the short and mid-term. That's the reason of a CSR department. So sustainability, whatever we say nowadays, even with corporates moving into inclusive business, still see sustainability as a mean to an end. And the end is to prosper as a corporation on all facets. For a corporate foundation, it's just the way around. A corporate foundation has a prime social goal. And kind of searching that or fulfilling that social goal, more and more should be done in a business way. They also are requested to deliver outcomes or deliver outputs or deliver concrete KPIs. They should all be efficient rather than in the old days just spending money. So they should, every grant should be documented and should be reported against. So they see the whole business logic as a mean to the social goal. And so it's all about means and ends. A corporate foundation has a social goal as the end goal and the business way of doing business as a mean, while the CSR department, it's just the way around. They see the business purpose as a final goal and sustainability as a mean to get there. And that's how they can work together if you define a dot on the horizon where social and business will come together.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Marcello.
No, I have a question. I mean, I'm a big fan of EVPA and your work. One question is, do you see an acceleration in more companies creating corporate foundations? And if so, is it globally
question,
happening, or is it happening more in Europe? Or
Which areas?
Yeah. Whether corporates start more corporate foundations, Marcelo, I would not dare to say. Where we see a big acceleration is the ones that have a corporate foundation start to rethink how they line up with the corporate foundation. We were 15 members 2-3 years ago. We're now 70 members. Still every day people knocking on our door requesting, both from the corporate side and the corporate foundation side, how can we strategically align without forgoing your own purpose, without forgoing your own final goal. So the acceleration is very much in the field that is set already. That's my perception. If you take it on a geographical scope, what we see is Europe definitely is on this track. LATAM is big time on this track. I was recently talking to a whole group of Colombian corporate foundations, and they were all very enthusiastic about those ideas. And with our colleagues in LATAM, we see that many corporate foundations are truly looking forward in aligning with their cooperation. Asia is still early days. They see philanthropy still as a little bit how we saw it 10 years ago. So more as the doing good. My brand should be there. The face of the owner should be on the school head or these kind of things. So Europe and LATAM are driving. The US is in between. You have Walmart, you have some others that try to push this forward. But then again, the philanthropic sector in US sometimes is still very traditional. So I would say Europe and LATAM are the front runners in this alignment.
Me? A question.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. You clearly explained that the corporate foundation is clearly a strategic partner for the business. And clearly we understand it's a blessing in building sustainable brand. We're hearing a lot about the next gen expectations from those big multinationals to be more engaged in the creation of social value with business relevance. Would you have some example to share about these employees' engagement benefits, and do you think it can be a blessing for those sustainable brands as well?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're touching on an issue which is, I think, very hot indeed. Why the inclusive business, one of the benefits of striving for inclusive business is also to get traction amongst the next gens, because they like it very much, this inclusive setting and this strive for sustainability. We at EVPA recently conducted an in-depth research on employee volunteering and employee engagement. Not so much analyzing what benefit it brings for the corporation. There's a lot of documentation why corporates should do so. To find the right people, to keep the right people, to keep them motivated, to keep them productive, and so on and so forth. So lots has been written on why employee engagement is beneficial for the corporation. We took it from the other side around. We were thinking, how can employee engagement bring value for the social foundation and merely for the social purpose organization that the corporate foundation is investing into. So we took it from the spirit of the social benefactor. How can employees really bring value and make a difference for the NGOs they invest into, for the social entrepreneurs the corporates invest into? And what we found that it's far more fulfilling for employees if not only they can use their skills, because they like to give soup once a year when it's very cold for all the clochards under the bridges, but when they truly start to apply their core capabilities, their core assets for the bigger benefit of those NGOs. If you're a financial guy, you know a lot about finance. Help out the social purpose organization on finance. When you're a marketeer, you know the last mile distribution. Well, help the social entrepreneur in crafting this last mile distribution. And that is far more rewarding than just, again, once a year, coming together, have fun time, which is not bad, but it goes beyond, let's say, the just short-term doing good that we used to see in corporate volunteering. So yeah, I think there is a whole wave going on, and we did a lot of research on that as EVPA as well. And for the ones who would like to do that, there is a whole toolkit on our website, free, which you can use and assess where you are in corporate volunteering. The more traditional, or the corporate volunteering that brings value for the business, but also for the social purpose organization.
Because I'm a journalist, I love stories, and especially because I am an impact journalist, I love beautiful stories. So could you share with us, for you, the most committed CEO that you met, and you are working on? A beautiful story was CEO, very committed.
Yeah, I'm not going to take a usual suspect, because we all know the usual suspect, the Emmanuel Faber, the Paul Polmans. You know them all. I'm gonna...
Anonymous one.
Yes, well, he's not anonymous, but I was very excited about a talk I had, I think it's 2 months ago, with Mr. Bolloré.
Bolloré?
Mr. Bolloré from Renault. He's the number 2 of Renault. And Renault has a very nice program, Renault Mobilis, because they know that, for sure, they're a car manufacturer, but if you put the car manufacturing in future as a business, you think about mobility. Mobility is a big issue. It's a big societal issue, and it's a big corporate issue. How to go about mobility. So they started Renault Mobilis, and they started to think how people with a distance to the labor market, living in outskirts of France, long away from the labor market, how mobility could help those people in bringing them back to labor. Which means that you also have to solve the transport issue. It's not good enough only to motivate people, to give them skills. If they're still living far away from cities, you have to make sure that every day they can commute, or only that if they already get to the place where they have to get an interview to get a job. So Renault started this whole issue around Renault Mobilis.
Okay.
And Renault Mobilis is now embarking on a bigger journey, and this was under the radar for Mr. Bolloré for quite some time. And together with François Rouvier and some other people, we had the opportunity to present this program to Mr. Bolloré. And it was it was scheduled, I think, for 3/4 of an hour. You never get more from a CEO at that. And it lasted 1.5 hours. Because at that moment in time, this CEO could see how doing good for society could also bring social innovation for his business in future, and could co-craft where his business was going in the next 10 years to come. And for me, that was a very clear manifestation how the doing good and the doing business, putting the right people from the corporate foundation, in this case it's the corporate investment fund, and the corporation at the right level together, they'll figure out how to move forward together.
Do you think that in the future all the companies should have a corporate foundation?
I don't think
Is it
so.
the future?
Yes, I don't think so. No. I don't think so because it's a bit maybe complex or complicated, but once a corporate foundation comes too close to the corporation, to the supply chain and the value chain of the corporation, once they were started to fulfill a social mission. So talking about ends and means, the social mission of a corporate foundation should remain the very first and foremost objective. And again, what we see happening is that if you start to work too closely on issues that are short-term and are value chain or supply chain driven, come too close to the CSR department, even your statutory requirement as a corporate foundation might be in jeopardy, might be questioned, and you might use tax status and so on and so forth. So what we see happening now is that between the corporate foundation, thinking long-term, bold, grant-making, high risk, we see new vehicles emerging. And these are the corporate impact funds. It is what Danone is doing with Danone Ecosystem, it's what Renault is doing with Renault Mobilis, it's what Schneider is doing, it's what Ignite is doing in the UK. They start specific vehicles that sit between Vodafone Institute, they sit in between the corporate foundation, long-term, bold, high-risk, grant-making, social purpose, and the corporation, shorter-term, tactical, value chain-driven.
Okay.
And these corporate impact funds are the kind of vehicles that we see emerging.
A question? Yeah.
Thank you.
It works. You have to speak louder.
Okay, I'll speak a bit
We
louder.
have to be louder than the other group.
Yeah, I would like to extrapolate a little bit after what you said. I was thinking about optimal allocation of resources, and I wanted to ask you what you thought about if it is possible to create a more comprehensive and maybe coherent strategy between sustainable strategy between corporate foundations, and if yes, is it something that we should pursue, or should each corporation pursue its own objective, or is it basically is it possible to create to achieve common goals between corporate foundations?
I really like this question because it goes to the heart of the matter. And as I said, we have this research going on. On 11 and 12 September, we're going to have a major event in Munich, hosted by the BMW Foundation, for all large corporate foundations and corporations in Europe to discuss this topic. So we are 80% done in our research, and we see different roles emerging. And so some corporate foundations, mainly from businesses that have a hard time to prove their sustainability. If you think about drinks, alcoholic drinks, weapons, extraction, smoking, it's not too easy to come too close to the corporation. And when they come too close to the corporation, they might be blamed and shamed as well by their constituency because they do good, so to speak. So they stay quite at arm's length of the corporation. But that's a minority. For all the other businesses, even textile, food, and so on and so forth, they're exploring what we call this whole spectrum of financial instruments along the spectrum of capital. From grant making, over impact investing, over direct corporate venturing. And what we see happening is that corporates, they move from corporate venturing, sourcing innovations, into corporate impact venturing. DSM, for example, is applying this. So they're sourcing, with their corporate means, innovations that are social and at the same time have a direct business benefit. So they apply their off-balance sheet money to source those social business innovations. You see others, like I said, Vodafone Institute, that put money aside from the balance sheet again to put in a social impact fund and give a little bit more leeway and freedom as an impact fund to invest in social enterprises or in social businesses. And then indeed you have money that comes also from the corporation and that is put in an endowment fund or in a grant making an allowance every year, and that's pure grants. And those grants, they think long-term, high risk. Change the cotton industry, change malaria, change mobility. And so depending on the type of money, you align on different time horizon. Shorter term for corporate impact venturing, very long term on grants and corporate foundations. That's what we see emerging.
Do you have a last question for Stephen before lunch?
Nobody else I want to ask another question.
Marcello.
Marcelo,
My question
you're
about-
so curious, which is
No,
so good.
Yeah, I love that.
I think it's very, very important.
You staying with us
potential.
this afternoon, no, Marcello?
Maybe. Potential. So on a personal level, behind all these corporate foundations, there must be leaders. There are people who run these foundations, or who decide to make money available, or are part of the board. How has your experience been in being with these people? Are you inspired by them? Do you really do it? Do they do it because they share the vision, I think, is part of this conference? Or is it a bit like business as usual?
Thanks again, Marcelo. I think it's really spot on, a very good question. And I think you know part of the answer yourself. You are with B Corp working towards inclusive businesses. You meet a lot of inspiring leaders. And you know, a certain moment in time, it takes a leap of belief. You can calculate whatever you want, but it takes a leap of belief to make a business into an inclusive business or a B Corp. The same is at the corporate foundation side. All this is very innovative. We hope, we cross fingers that in 5 years' time this is mainstream. And we don't talk about anymore about the why, but how are we going to do this? So you find as well on the corporate foundation side a couple of inspiring leaders that clearly feel that aligning with their corporation, with all the risks that come with it, is also something they have to do for the better of both, of society and business. Because they see that as a corporate foundation alone, you can only do so much with your grant money. Even if it's 50 million a year, which is big money, you can only do so much. If you can leverage the big machine in the same direction to create social good, you leverage so many more assets. So yes, at this moment in time, you need inspirational leaders that take a leap forward. Yeah, we find the same.
Thank you. I think they don't have much shows.
But this is really a guess. This is my stomach speaking. I think it's about 10 to 15, maybe 20% of CEOs or CEOs of corporate foundations or CEOs of corporates that today are truly taking that leap of belief. We don't need 100%. We only need 30, 40% to get to the flipping point. But the majority is still business as usual,
Yeah.
risk averse, sitting and waiting. So this 10, 15% is good. And they will inspire then the next 20, 30%.
Thank you so much. This is our final session for this morning. So thank you so much, Stephen. We can make some noise.